Somewhere inside your belly right now there is an organ the size of a banana that has been slowly drowning, not in water, not in acid, in fat, less than half a gram of it. Lighter than a single birthday candle, and that tiny, invisible smear of grease has been quietly destroying your ability to process sugar for years, maybe decades, while every doctor you have ever visited pointed at your blood work, shook their head and told you the same exhausting lie, that this is permanent, that you will be on medication for the rest of your life, that the best you can hope for is management. They were wrong, and I can say that with a straight face because a British professor named Roy Taylor proved it with MRI scans, published it in The Lancet, and then watched 46% of nearly 300 people with type 2 diabetes walk away from every single one of their medications within 12 months. Not because of a new drug, not because of surgery, because of what they ate. He found that when you remove that whisper-thin coating of fat from the pancreas through specific dietary changes, the insulin-producing cells underneath, cells everyone assumed were dead, wake back up and start working as if nothing ever happened. Scientists at Columbia University confirmed the mechanism. Those cells were never destroyed, they were in hiding. The technical term is de-differentiation. The human term is hope. And if you give me the next few minutes of your attention, I am going to walk you through 5 ordinary foods that peer-reviewed clinical trials have shown can dismantle this disease from the inside out, each one attacking a completely different piece of the machinery that keeps diabetes alive in your body. Stick with this video all the way through, because what you are about to learn has the genuine power to change the rest of your life forever. Let me set the stage so every food I mention lands with its full weight. Your liver and your pancreas are locked in a destructive partnership that Professor Taylor calls the twin cycle. It begins when excess calories, particularly those your muscles cannot store as energy, get rerouted to the liver and converted into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. The sole product of that process is palmitic acid, a saturated fat, Gisart, that is uniquely toxic to insulin-producing cells. Once the liver gets fatty, it goes deaf to insulin's most important instruction: stop releasing glucose. So even while you sleep, even when you have not eaten a bite since dinner, your liver keeps dumping sugar into your bloodstream like a faucet no one can turn off. That is why your morning fasting number is always high, and it has nothing to do with what you ate the night before. Meanwhile, the overloaded liver starts shipping its excess fat out into the blood as triglycerides. And those triglycerides eventually wrap around the beta cells in your pancreas and silence them. 2 vicious cycles feeding each other year after year until a diagnosis arrives. But because those beta cells are sleeping rather than dead, the twin cycle can be spun in reverse. The direct trial proved it across nearly 300 participants, and a 5-year follow-up confirmed that remission held for those who maintained the changes. Every food on this list targets a specific gear in that cycle. There is a vegetable you can grow on your kitchen counter in 72 hours that attacks the liver cycle at its source, and almost nobody in the diabetes world is talking about it. Broccoli sprouts. These tiny pale shoots contain roughly 100 times more sulforaphane than a head of mature broccoli. A team at Lund University in Sweden wanted to find a compound that could reverse the specific gene signature of a diabetic liver, so they screened nearly 4,000 substances against that signature. Sulforaphane came out on top. It works by activating a protein called NRF2 that enters the nucleus of your liver cells and physically turns down the genes responsible for gluconeogenesis. The process your liver uses to manufacture glucose from scratch. In a 12-week placebo-controlled trial of 97 people with type 2 diabetes, concentrated broccoli sprout extract reduced fasting blood glucose by 10%. Among the obese subgroup with the worst control, HbA1c dropped by 1.4%, a result the lead researcher said was sufficient to reduce complications in the eyes, kidneys, and blood vessels. Metformin works through a completely different mechanism called AMPK activation, which means sulforaphane is not competing with your medication. It is opening a second front. Grow the sprouts yourself from organic seeds in a mason jar. Rinse twice a day, eat about a cup daily, and chew thoroughly. Because chewing activates an enzyme called myrosinase that converts the precursor compound into active sulforaphane right there in your mouth. If you prefer cooked broccoli instead, toss in a pinch of mustard seed powder after cooking. Mustard contains its own myrosinase and rescues the sulforaphane that heat would otherwise destroy. 2. Lentils, chickpeas, black beans. Pick your favorite because they all perform the same borderline miraculous trick. Legumes are the only food category ever shown to improve your blood sugar at a meal you have not even eaten yet. Scientists call it the second meal effect. Eat a cup of lentils at lunch, and your glucose response at dinner drops, even if dinner contains 0 legumes. The mechanism runs through your gut. Legumes are packed with resistant starch and soluble fiber that your small intestine cannot digest, so they pass intact into your colon, where specific bacteria ferment them into short-chain fatty acids, primarily butyrate and acetate. Those molecules travel through the bloodstream to your liver and your muscles and directly turn up the volume on insulin sensitivity. A landmark study published in Science by Professor Liping Zhao at Rutgers University put people with type 2 diabetes on a high-fiber diet rich in legumes for 12 weeks and discovered something astonishing. Out of 141 strains of gut bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, just 15 became dominant on the high-fiber diet, and those 15 reorganized the entire gut environment. They made it slightly acidic, which starved harmful bacteria, and they pumped out so much butyrate that the fiber group had significantly lower blood sugar, faster drops in fasting glucose, and greater weight loss than the control group, even though both groups took the same diabetes drug. A separate trial published in JAMA Internal Medicine by Dr. David Jenkins randomized diabetic patients to 1 cup of legumes daily and recorded a 0.5% HbA1c reduction in 3 months, beating a high wheat fiber diet head to head. 1 cup a day. That is all. Start with half a cup if your stomach is not used to the fiber and work up over a week. 3. 2 cups of blueberries a day improved insulin sensitivity by 22% in obese insulin-resistant adults without a single pound of weight loss. That number comes from a 2010 double-blind, placebo-controlled trial at the Pennington Biomedical Research Center. And it was measured using the hyperinsulinemic euglycemic clamp, the single most precise instrument in medicine for quantifying how well your cells respond to insulin. The participants drank a smoothie containing freeze-dried whole blueberry powder twice daily for 6 weeks. A matched group drank an identical tasting placebo smoothie with the same calories and sugar, but no blueberry bioactives. The blueberry group gained no advantage from calorie reduction or fat loss. The anthocyanins did the work directly, activating a pathway called AMP-activated protein kinase, the exact same switch metformin flips, while simultaneously shielding beta cells from the oxidative stress that accelerates their decline. Wild blueberries contain roughly double the anthocyanin concentration of cultivated varieties. So if you can find them frozen at your grocery store, grab those. Blend them into a morning smoothie or stir them into oatmeal. The freezing process does not degrade anthocyanins, so frozen is just as effective as fresh and far cheaper. 4. A 2025 meta-analysis published in Frontiers in Nutrition pulled together 7 controlled trials involving 463 people with type 2 diabetes and found that apple cider vinegar lowered fasting blood sugar by an average of nearly 22 milligrams per deciliter and reduced HbA1c by 1.53 percentage points. The dose-response curve was perfectly linear. Every additional milliliter of daily vinegar pushed fasting glucose down another 1.26 milligrams per deciliter, with benefits kicking in above 10 milliliters a day. The acetic acid in the vinegar slows gastric emptying so sugar enters the bloodstream more gradually, inhibits alpha amylase so less starch gets broken down in the first place, and nudges the liver to store glucose as glycogen instead of releasing it overnight. One particularly clever trial discovered that 2 tablespoons taken at bedtime lowered the next morning's fasting glucose more than the same dose taken with meals, making it an ideal nighttime ritual. Dilute 1 to 2 tablespoons of raw unfiltered apple cider vinegar in a tall glass of water. Drink through a straw to protect your tooth enamel. Never take it straight. Undiluted vinegar can damage your esophagus and erode enamel within weeks. 5. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon. That is not a typo, and it is not folklore. A randomized controlled trial in the Journal of the American Board of Family Medicine gave 1 gram of cinnamon daily, roughly half a teaspoon, to people with poorly controlled type 2 diabetes for 90 days. HbA1c fell by 0.83 percentage points against placebo. The compounds responsible are proanthocyanidins that dock onto insulin receptors and mimic insulin's signal, essentially tricking your cells into opening the door to glucose even when your own insulin supply is low. Cinnamon also activates glycogen synthase, which tells the liver to pull glucose out of the blood and store it, and it blocks protein tyrosine phosphatase, an enzyme that normally slams the brakes on insulin signaling. Use Ceylon cinnamon, not the common cassia variety found in most supermarkets, because cassia contains high levels of coumarin, a compound that can stress the liver at daily doses. Ceylon is labeled as such and is widely available online. Stir it into your morning coffee, shake it over oatmeal, or blend it into the same smoothie that already has your blueberries. Now step back and look at what these 5 foods do when they work together. Broccoli sprouts shut down the liver's runaway glucose factory through the NRF2 pathway. Legumes rebuild the gut bacteria that produce butyrate, directly restoring insulin sensitivity from the inside. Blueberries flip the AMPK switch and protect the beta cells that are trying to recover. Apple cider vinegar slows sugar absorption during the day and quiets the liver's glucose output overnight. And cinnamon amplifies every insulin molecule your pancreas manages to produce by mimicking its signal at the receptor. 5 foods, 5 different mechanisms, covering the liver, the gut, the pancreas, the muscle, and the insulin receptor itself. Not one of them requires a prescription. Not one costs more than a few dollars a week. And every single claim I just made is backed by a peer-reviewed clinical trial published in The Lancet, Science Translational Medicine, JAMA. Internal Medicine, the Journal of Nutrition, the Journal of the American Board of Family Medicine, or Frontiers in Nutrition. Your pancreas is not dead. Those cells are underneath the fat, waiting. Feed your body the right raw materials, and it will do what it was always designed to do: heal itself. Start with even one of these 5 foods tomorrow. Your future self will not believe what happens next.